At 30, I heard the words no one was ever ready to hear. It was coming from my doctor. Stage 3 cancer. I was scared. So I called my parents, shaking, crying and begging for comfort. They were my only hope. My father answered the call but didn't bother to ask how I was feeling. He said my sister's wedding was in 2 weeks and so they were busy planning her wedding, and would attend to me later. I couldn't believe it. So I went through chemo alone. No family. No support. No safety net. No one to encourage me. 3 years later, I survived. Now, just 3 days ago, my mother called, desperate, asking me to become my sister's caregiver. I stayed silent, then answered her with just 7 words that shocked them to the bone. 3 years ago, my life was aggressively ordinary in the way you don't appreciate until it's gone. I worked as a project coordinator for a regional architecture firm in Providence. Not glamorous, but steady. I liked the rhythm of it. Spreadsheets, timelines, emails that made sense if you followed the logic carefully enough. I was good at anticipating problems before they happened, smoothing things over before they escalated. People trusted me with details. I liked being useful. My apartment was a second-floor walk-up above a bakery that started prepping at 4 a.m. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of bread and sugar and yeast. It felt comforting, like living inside someone else's routine. I had a grey couch I'd bought second-hand, a small dining table that doubled as a desk, and a pothose plant that I watered religiously every Sunday. I measured my life in manageable habits. Monday, grocery runs. Wednesday, laundry. Friday, takeout and a documentary I'd half-watch while scrolling my phone. I didn't have a partner. Not because I was unlucky or unlovable, but because I'd spent most of my 20s recovering from the quiet damage of my childhood. The kind of damage that doesn't leave visible bruises, just a permanent sense that love is conditional and attention must be earned. My younger sister, Natalie, had never had that problem. Natalie was 27 then. Engaged. Glowing. The center of every conversation she entered without even trying. She worked in event marketing, ironically, and had turned her own wedding planning into a kind of Olympic sport. Our parents adored her. They always had. It wasn't subtle. It never had been. Natalie got praise for existing. I got praise for performing well. If she cried, they rushed in. If I struggled, they told me I was strong. That word, strong, would come back to haunt me later. The call from my doctor came on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember that detail because Tuesdays were my lightest meeting days. I'd taken an early lunch and was eating soup at my desk, scrolling through an article I wasn't really reading. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Hello. Hi, is this Lara Whitman? This is Dr. Ellis's office. My spoon hovered midair. Yes. We've received your test results. Dr. Ellis would like to see you in person as soon as possible. Are you available tomorrow morning? That was the moment my body knew before my brain did. My chest tightened, not sharply, not painfully, just enough to register as wrong. I'd had tests because of a lump I'd felt accidentally one night in the shower. I hadn't panicked. I'd done what responsible adults do. I'd booked appointments. I'd told myself not to spiral. But people don't ask you to come in urgently for good news. Yes, I said. Tomorrow is fine. After I hung up, I stared at my computer screen for a long time. The soup went cold. Someone slacked me a question about a site revision, and I typed back something polite and coherent while my hands shook just slightly above the keyboard. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on my back staring at the ceiling fan, watching its slow, uneven rotation, thinking about every careless assumption I'd made about my future. I told myself I was catastrophizing. I told myself I was healthy. I told myself I was 31 and nothing like this happened to people like me. The next morning, Dr. Ellis didn't waste time. She had the careful voice doctors use when they're about to change your life. Stage 3. Aggressive. Treatment needed immediately. I heard the words as if they were being spoken underwater. My ears rang. The room felt too small. I nodded at the right moments, asked the questions I knew I was supposed to ask, wrote nothing down because my hands wouldn't cooperate. When it was over, she asked gently, "Do you have someone who can come with you next time?" I thought of my parents instantly. "I'll call my dad," I said. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot for 15 minutes before I made the call. I rehearsed what I would say, but none of the versions sounded real enough. Eventually, I just dialed. He answered on the third ring. "Lara, what's wrong?" His tone was already impatient. "Dad," I said, and my voice broke immediately. "I just came from the doctor." There was a pause. "Okay." I have cancer." Silence. "Stage 3, I added quickly, terrified that if I didn't keep talking, he'd fill the space with something dismissive. "They want to start chemo right away." "I'm scared." I was crying openly now. I didn't try to hide it. Another pause. I could hear something in the background. My mother's voice, faint, asking who it was. My father exhaled. "Lara," he said, slower now, measured. "This is a lot." "I know," I whispered. I need you. I don't know what to do." He didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't say we'll figure it out. What he said instead rearranged something permanent inside me. "We can't deal with this right now." I stopped breathing. "What?" I said. "Your sister's wedding is in 2 weeks," he continued, as if explaining a scheduling conflict. "Your mother is already overwhelmed. We're in the middle of final planning. This timing is really bad. Bad." "I have cancer," I said again, slower, like volume might fix comprehension. "Yes, and that's terrible," he said, his voice tightening. "But you've always been independent. You're strong. Natalie needs us right now. After the wedding, we'll revisit this." Revisit. I felt something go very still inside my chest. "Dad," I said, "I'm starting chemo next week." "I have to go," he interrupted. "Your mother's calling for me. We'll talk later." The line went dead. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear long after the call ended, listening to nothing. Then I took a screenshot. I don't know why I did it. It wasn't conscious. Something instinctive took over, like my body understood before my mind that memory alone wouldn't be safe. I labeled the folder family. The first chemotherapy session was on a Thursday. The infusion room was bright and quiet, filled with the soft mechanical sounds of machines doing violent things politely. Reclining chairs lined the walls. 4 poles stood like sentinels. Most of the chairs were occupied. Most of the patients weren't alone. I checked in, was given a clipboard, and directed to chair 11. The nurse smiled at me. "First time?" "Yes." "Do you have someone joining you today?" "No," she hesitated, then nodded gently. "Okay. We'll take good care of you." She was kind. But kindness from strangers doesn't replace the absence of the people who made you. As the medication began to drip into my veins, I looked around the room. A woman across from me had her husband rubbing her feet absent-mindedly, murmuring jokes. An older man had his daughter reading aloud from a paperback. A teenager slept with his mother's hand on his arm. I watched all of it with a strange detachment, like I was observing another species. My phone buzzed an hour into the session. A text from my mother. "Your dad told me about your health scare. That's awful timing. Are you okay?" Health scare. I stared at the words until they blurred. I typed back, "I'm starting chemo today." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. She replied 40 minutes later. "Oh. We're at the venue finalizing seating. Can we talk tomorrow?" I took another screenshot. The days blurred quickly after that. Chemo is not one thing. It's many things stacked on top of each other until your body forgets what normal feels like. Nausea that came in waves. Bone-deep exhaustion. A metallic taste that ruined food. The creeping fear every time I touched my hair. I drove myself to every appointment. I sat alone through every infusion. I learned which nurses like to chat and which ones let silence be silence. I learned how to position my arm so it didn't ache. I learned that the human body is both fragile and stubborn beyond belief. My parents did not visit. They did not call. My sister sent one text. "Hope you're okay. Wedding craziness over here." I replied with a heart emoji and threw up 20 minutes later. At night, when the apartment was too quiet, I scrolled through social media. Dress fittings. Cake tastings. Countdown posts. 14 days to go. 10. 7. I stopped liking anything. I just watched. Halfway through treatment, my hair began to fall out in earnest. Not dramatically. Not in clumps at first. Just more than usual. Enough to clog the drain. Enough to stay on my pillow. One morning, I woke up and knew. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and ran my fingers through it once. Hair came away in my hand. I sat down on the edge of the tub and cried until my throat hurt. Then I shaved it. I didn't do it ceremonially. I didn't invite anyone. I stood alone in my bathroom, clippers buzzing, watching my reflection turn into someone I didn't recognize. Afterward, I wrapped my head in a towel and sat on the floor. I called my mother. It rang. And rang. And rang. Voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I added the missed call to the folder. The wedding happened on a Saturday. I knew because my sister had posted a photo at 9:12 a.m. with the caption "Best day ever starts now." I was in bed, too nauseous to stand. Later that evening, my father posted a family photo. All of them smiling. Champagne glasses raised. So proud of our girl. I stared at the image for a long time. Then I closed the app. That night, I slept for 13 hours straight. 2 days after the wedding, my oncologist adjusted my medication. "Your body's taking a hit," she said gently. "Are you getting support at home?" "Yes," I lied automatically. She nodded, satisfied. On the drive home, I pulled over and cried until my chest hurt. That was the night I started keeping everything. Not just screenshots. Notes. Dates. Times. Who called? Who didn't? What was said? What wasn't? I told myself it was for clarity. For chemo brain. For my own sanity. But deep down, I think I already knew. When people fail you this completely, they will rewrite the story later. And I was done being erased. By the end of 6 months, I barely recognized myself. Thinner. Bald. Scarred. Alive. My final chemo session ended without fanfare. No bells. No applause. Just the nurse smiling and saying, "You did it." I drove home alone. That night, I sat on my couch wrapped in a blanket, my phone in my hand, staring at the folder labeled family. It was thick now. Heavy. I didn't know yet what it would be used for. Only that I would never delete it. Because something told me this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the part where I survived. Surviving changes the temperature of your memories. Things that once felt painful become cold, clear, sharp-edged. When treatment ended, people expected relief, closure, gratitude. What I felt instead was inventory. I was alive, but now I knew exactly who hadn't cared whether I stayed that way. Recovery was quieter than illness. No appointments every week. No nurses. No machines humming beside me. Just long days where my body tried to remember how to be human again. I went back to work part-time first. My boss gave me my old desk and didn't ask questions. Coworkers brought soup and awkward smiles and told me how strong I was. I nodded and let them believe that word meant something good. My parents never acknowledged the end of my treatment. Not with a call. Not with a card. Not with relief. It was as if my illness had been an inconvenient weather event they'd waited out indoors. 3 weeks after my final chemo, my mother called. I was folding laundry when my phone rang. Her name on the screen made my stomach tighten, not with hope, but with something closer to dread. "Hi, Mom." "Oh good, you answered," she said brightly. "I wasn't sure if you'd still be resting." "Resting? I'm fine," I said. "What's up?" A pause. Papers shuffling. "We're thinking of refinancing the house," she said. "Your father wants to know if you're still planning to keep that old savings account." I laughed once out loud, before I could stop myself. "What?" "You know, the one Grandma left you," she continued. "It's just sitting there, right? We thought it might make sense to pool resources now that Natalie's settling into married life." My hands went numb. "You're calling to ask me for money." "Well," she corrected lightly, "we're calling to discuss options." I thought of the infusion chair, the shaved head, the nights I'd cried alone on my bathroom floor. "You didn't call when I was dying," I said quietly. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she snapped. "You weren't dying." Silence stretched between us. Then she sighed, long and put upon. "Look," she said. "We all had a hard year. Let's not reopen old wounds." Old wounds. "I'm hanging up now," I said. I ended the call and added the timestamp to my notes. That was when I realized something important. My family didn't see my illness as trauma. They saw it as an interruption. Something that happened to them, not to me. And interruptions, once over, are meant to be forgotten. Natalie reached out next. Not directly. Not honestly. She commented on one of my rare Instagram posts, a picture of me at a park, wrapped in a scarf, hair just beginning to grow back. "So glad you're feeling better. We should catch up soon." Catch up. I didn't reply. A week later, she texted. "Hey stranger. Mom says you've been distant. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "I was sick." Her response came almost immediately. "I know, but you're better now, right? Life keeps moving." There it was. That sentence was the thesis statement of my childhood. Life keeps moving, for some people. The invitation arrived in the mail in early spring. Cream-colored cardstock. Embossed lettering. Housewarming brunch. Natalie and her husband had bought a place. My parents were hosting the celebration. The RSVP card was already filled out. Yes, of course. In my mother's handwriting. I stared at it until I started laughing. They hadn't even asked. I almost didn't go. Not because I was afraid. Because I was tired. But something in me, something newly hardened, wanted to see them. Wanted to confirm. So I went. I wore a simple black dress and a wig I hated but knew would make them more comfortable. I practiced my neutral face in the mirror before leaving. The house was full when I arrived. Music. Laughter. The smell of baked goods. My mother spotted me first. "Oh," she exclaimed, eyes flicking briefly to my head before she recovered. "There you are." She hugged me lightly, as if I were fragile in a way that inconvenienced her. My father nodded from across the room. Natalie approached with her husband in tow. "Lara," she said, air-kissing my cheek. "You look healthy." Healthy. I smiled. "Congratulations on the house." "Thanks," she said. "It's been crazy. Marriage is such a big adjustment." I wondered if she could hear herself. We sat at the table together. Conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. Stories about the wedding. Honeymoon mishaps. Renovation plans. At one point, my father raised his glass. "To Natalie," he said. "And to family. Health, happiness, and moving forward." Everyone clinked glasses. I didn't lift mine. No one noticed. After brunch, while guests mingled, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "About what?" I asked. She lowered her voice. "Your attitude." I blinked. You've been cold, she continued. Distant. People have noticed. I had cancer, I said. Yes, and we're grateful you're okay, she replied impatiently. But you can't hold it over us forever. Forever. I wasn't holding anything, I said. I was surviving. She scoffed. You always make things about you. That was when something finally snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I needed you, I said, my voice steady. And you chose a seating chart. Her face hardened. We did what we could. No, I said. You did what you wanted. She opened her mouth to argue. I walked out. The fallout came fast. Texts accusing me of being ungrateful. Calls I didn't answer. A voicemail from my father telling me I'd embarrassed the family. I saved everything. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. A month later, the letter arrived. Official. Legal. My parents were revising their estate plan. They wanted to ensure fairness and avoid future misunderstandings. Translation: they wanted my consent to redistribute assets. Specifically, the savings account. Specifically, my inheritance. I read the letter twice. Then I laughed until tears streamed down my face. Because suddenly, the pattern was so obvious it was almost funny. They hadn't abandoned me because they were overwhelmed. They had abandoned me because I was no longer useful. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I met with a lawyer. A quiet woman with sharp eyes who read through my documents carefully. You've kept excellent records, she said. That's rare. I didn't plan to, I said. It just happened. She nodded. Often does. She explained my options. My rights. The implications. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt something close to power. I sent one message to my family group chat. I will not be transferring or redistributing any assets. Please direct future communication through my attorney. It was the first boundary I'd ever set that didn't come with an apology. The responses were immediate. Shock. Anger. Guilt wrapped in concern. Natalie accused me of being selfish. My father accused me of betrayal. My mother accused me of changing. They were right. I had. That night, I opened the family folder and scrolled through it slowly. The missed calls. The screenshots. The dates where no one showed up. The messages where they minimized my pain. It wasn't revenge yet. But it was evidence. And evidence has weight. I didn't know exactly how the story would end. Only that for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let them write it for me. There is a strange calm that comes after you stop explaining yourself. No more rehearsing conversations in the shower. No more wondering how to phrase pain so it sounds reasonable. No more hoping someone will finally say, "We should have done better." Silence, when chosen, is not empty. It is finished. 3 years passed quietly. I stayed cancer-free. I changed jobs. I moved apartments. I learned which foods my body still rejected and which ones felt like forgiveness. My parents existed at a distance. Occasional stiff holiday texts, forwarded family updates, nothing intimate. Natalie never reached out directly again. And I was fine with that. Truly. Because distance had given me something I'd never had before. Perspective. I could finally see my family clearly. Not as villains, not as monsters, but as people who had made a series of choices. Consistent ones. And consistency tells the truth louder than apologies ever do. The call came on a Tuesday. Late afternoon. Gray sky. The kind of day that feels unfinished. I didn't recognize the number at first. I almost didn't answer. Something told me to. "Hello, Lara," my mother said. Her voice sounded smaller. "I need you," she said immediately. No greeting. No buffer. "Please don't hang up." I leaned against the kitchen counter and closed my eyes. "What's wrong?" She inhaled sharply. It's Natalie. I waited. She's very sick, my mother said. It's serious. The doctors aren't sure how long. I felt a flicker of something. Not joy. Not revenge. Recognition. What do you need? I asked. Another inhale. We need help. Care help. Someone to stay with her, coordinate appointments, manage medications. You understand that world better than anyone. Of course I did. I had lived in it. Alone. My father took the phone then. Your mother's not handling this well, he said. We're older now. This is a lot. I pictured him saying the same words years ago. Standing in the same kitchen. Making the same calculations. How long has this been going on? I asked. A few months, he admitted. A few months. And you're calling me now? Yes, he said quickly. Because family steps up. That's what matters. Family. I didn't answer right away. Silence stretched. Lara, my mother whispered. I thought about chemo days. About infusion chairs. About watching the clock alone. I thought about the wedding dress fittings. The guest lists. The planning they couldn't deal with this now for. I thought about the savings account letter. The brunch. The word dramatic. And then I spoke. 7 words. Calm. Even. Almost gentle. I can't deal with this now. The line went dead quiet. What? My mother said. I'm unavailable, I continued. I hope you understand. You're joking, my father snapped. No, I said. I'm being honest. You went through this, my mother cried. You of all people. Yes, I said softly. I did. Alone. That's not fair, my father said. I almost laughed. I'm sorry you feel that way, I replied. Please don't contact me about this again. I hung up. They didn't take it well. The messages came fast. Accusations dressed as disappointment. Guilt dressed as grief. Rage dressed as moral superiority. How could you abandon your sister? This isn't who we raised. We never turned our backs on you. I read every message. And for the first time, they didn't hurt. Because I knew exactly what they were. Not confusion. Not heartbreak. Desperation. Natalie finally reached out herself. A single text. I never knew it was that bad for you. I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied. You never asked. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. That was the last time I heard from her. Weeks passed. Then months. The silence settled. Not heavy, not tense. Clean. I learned through extended family that Natalie's condition stabilized. Then worsened. Then stabilized again. My parents managed. They hired help. They figured it out. Just like I had. One evening, as I sorted old files on my laptop, I found the family folder again. I opened it. Scrolled. And then, without ceremony, I deleted it. Not because it wasn't true. Because I didn't need proof anymore. People sometimes think revenge has to be loud. Public. Crushing. Cruel. They imagine confrontation. Exposure. Shouting. But real power doesn't raise its voice. It simply stops participating. I don't hate my family. I don't wish them harm. I also don't sacrifice myself on altars they built without my consent. Boundaries aren't punishments. They're acknowledgements. Of history. Of pattern. Of truth. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the girl I was at 30. Curled on the floor with a phone pressed to her ear, waiting for someone to say, "We're coming." No one did. And somehow, she lived anyway. I live for her now. And that is enough. Moral lessons. This story teaches us that true love and loyalty are measured not by words, but by actions when it matters most. Family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by who shows up, who cares, and who stands by you in your darkest moments. Life can test us in ways we never imagine, and sometimes the people we trust most will disappoint us. But those betrayals, painful as they are, can become lessons in resilience, self-respect, and boundaries. Survival isn't just about overcoming illness. It's about refusing to let neglect, selfishness, or indifference dictate your value. It reminds us that strength comes from rising above disappointment, building your life on your own terms, and recognizing that the most powerful response to cruelty is to live fully, independently, and unapologetically. True empowerment lies in taking control of your own story and refusing to be a footnote in someone else's.